Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm just gonna briefly record. Okay, great. So basically, this is like, just all over the place or whatever, but for holistic health, you want things to be more in a model of self-care, self-centered, neutrality. Um, The reason why we call it that, or why it's called that, is because of the ideology should always go through a self check before reacting. That should always be the impulsive response, is reflection, not reaction. So, karma is a thing. When you do act, when you do impulsively go off of what you're taught somatically, what you're taught physically, mentally, environmentally, you grow through an abundance of resource. And when you're able to see yourself within that overall abundance, you're actually able to acquire yourself in a more autonomous, actualized way. Seeing yourself as an abundant resource is abundance. Okay? You have to also consider yourself to be a part of the environment. Okay. So you, when doing things like this, you have to recall that this is gonna get a little, you still gotta dig the bus. You still got balls to bust into today. So as upset as you may get, especially at work or any professional, any kind of social setting, as upset as you may get, you have to remember at the end of the day, you still have other things to do. You still have mostly a professional. You have a situation of, you know, do I take this moment to impulsively respond, or do I take this moment to educationally reflect? Okay, informatively reflect, reflect with the intention of learning. Okay, so the motif I want to pull out is this fact that when you use choreography that you do learn from the environment, there is a cost, the environment. So if you, let's say, right, you learn that as a strategy to survive, right? Well, you learn that at a Six of Cups card, tarot, like you learn that when you are in that environment. When you're no longer in that environment, using those implications, it's actually not necessarily valid because you're not able to be seen as serious or professional because, again, that's something you should have learned and kind of left in childhood. Okay? So that karma comes back around. You sort of see your former self in a younger version to reflect on the environmental challenge that is before you, and that you're, what we say, repeating the cycle. Okay? Gender structuralized violence leads to, which includes microaggressions, leads to, of all forms, which leads to a implication of domination, control, ultimately some type of holistic structure or some type of structure model of care that is not sustainable. Okay, gender structuralized violence. So you have to understand that when you're, even as a responsible person, doing these different things, civility, like socially, so with a civil mind, you have to understand that there is also civil politics at play, even in a professional setting. So you have to also be mindful of how you carry yourself at home. It's not how you carry yourself at work type of situation. You know, you should not be using things that you learned from childhood at work because one, it's childish, and two, it's not necessarily mature. It's not necessarily something that should be performed in the workplace. Okay. Those things are things that should be done in a setting more, shall we say, off book, more in a community setting, more in a particular moment of gratification and validation seen as intentionally learning. not intentionally controlling. You see what I'm saying? And so at work, when you're using defensive tactics, microaggressions, different types of particularities, even to clarify statements, to name how you feel, to even project insecurities or motifs within yourself, you even have to you have to approach that from a model of how you see yourself. That is a model of care, actually. That is valid. Where it becomes hazardous is when there is some action being required. You see what I'm saying? This is what we call in scholarship, really academia, narrative-based research. With that being said, you have to understand that testimonials, they speak for the testimony speaks for itself. You don't have to actually act on those things, and in some ways, it will be its own discipline, if that makes sense, its own implication, because it is something that was born in a publication, in a continuum, in a canon of knowledge. Okay, so every time that you produce information, you have to also be cognizant or corresponding to the overall possibility, or we'll just say overall canon of literature that is also like what you're producing, because that's how language, our society, our culture is built. We learned through a social environment. We learned how to talk, communicate, theorize, and be ourselves through a system of community. So you want to always remember, even when self-care is being used, the community mindset, the novelty, okay, novelty, of the situation really relies on your own ability to write your argument in a compelling way that makes you feel validated. A listening ear is only one thing. When you require multiple things, how you feel about it, the complexities, how does it relate to you? Tell me what resonates, explain it, how this resonated with you in these multiple ways. Those are what we call argumentations. Those are things that are formed through parcelization, through multiplicity. There are multiple things involved with those things. So when you're talking about the singularity, the novelties, the ideologies, and just the overall structure, it's a lot more simpler than you may think. And like I said earlier, it's just not a place for that type of behavior. Okay, you have to understand that energetic taxation wise, it will cost you more energy to do those things in the long run than if you were to just reflect educationally or with the intention to learn. Okay, so does that make sense? It doesn't seem like it's clicking, but that's okay. It takes a minute. So you have to remember your role in society is not only for you, but for your community as well. And as individual as you may want to be, you're still in a canon of literature, even as a body and a vesselage of information. Okay? So keep it in the house.